I was already running terribly late that night, but everything else vanished the instant my eyes locked onto this mysterious woman out in the open rain. Rain lashed down, cars rushed by, and cold wind bit hard against my skin. Yet none of those things stuck in my memory nearly as sharply as her lonely figure. She stood right outside a closed-down coffee shop, gripping a cracked phone loosely within one of her hands. Her stare was fixed blankly on the road ahead, as if she was holding out for a person who would never walk through and meet her. Hundreds of passers-by streamed past without sparing her even a fleeting second of their attention. And truth be told, I nearly kept walking too, wrapped up in my own miserable long day at work. My shirt was damp all over from constantly hurrying back and forth between different office buildings. All I craved at that moment was to get back home, order some takeout food, and wipe another soul-crushing week at Bennett Technologies from my mind. That was when her quiet voice drifted over and pulled me fully out of my own tired thoughts. "Please, just stop pretending," she mumbled, not speaking to any living soul standing nearby, but talking straight to her damaged phone screen. Those words felt so jarring coming from someone who looked so calm and put together on the surface. She wasn't wailing or throwing a loud, dramatic scene for strangers to gawk at. She fought desperately just to keep herself from falling apart. I slowed my footsteps without really understanding what was driving me to pause there. Maybe it was because every other person chose to ignore her pain, or maybe I simply knew exactly how it felt to have a terrible day and go completely unseen by everyone around you. I took a few cautious steps closer toward her position on the wet sidewalk. "Are you all right?" The second those words left my mouth, she lifted her head, and her eyes instantly turned guarded and wary. "I'm fine," she replied flatly. It was that classic reply people give when every single signal shows they are far from being okay. I glanced across the empty, rain-soaked street all around our spot. You know, most folks standing alone out in pouring rain who say they're fine are almost never telling the whole truth. A faint, fleeting expression flickered across her facial features. It was not quite a full smile, yet it marked the very first sign that my words had actually gotten through to her. "Do you normally go around talking to random strangers like this?" she questioned me. "Only to people who look like they're about to get into a silent argument with the terrible weather outside," I shot back. That little response actually drew a brief real smile out from her for just a split second. Soon after though, she shifted her gaze away from my face once more. "I don't need any kind of assistance from you." "I never said that you did," I answered her calmly. She swung her eyes back to focus directly on my face again. "Then what exactly are you doing standing here beside me?" I glanced down toward the umbrella I was still clutching in my grasp. "Honestly speaking, I'm under cover and you are getting soaked out here." She shook her head from side to side in refusal. "You do not even know the slightest thing about who I am." "You are 100% correct about that fact. For all you know, you could be wasting this umbrella on someone who truly deserves it far more than me." A short laugh escaped my chest hearing that odd statement. "Wait a minute, is there some official ranking system that decides who earns the right to use an umbrella?" "You perfectly understand what I am trying to get across," she insisted. And I really did get her underlying meaning. She was not talking about rain gear at all, she was talking deep down about herself. For so long, this woman had convinced herself that she had to endure every hardship entirely on her own shoulders. I stretched my arm out, holding the umbrella out toward her waiting hands. "Take it." Her whole demeanor shifted with uncertainty. "No, I can't just take your umbrella away from you." "Yes, you absolutely can," I insisted firmly. "But what are you going to use to stay dry then?" She pressed me. I tilted my chin toward the street stretching out behind my back. "My apartment sits 6 whole blocks from where we are right now. You are going to end up completely soaked through to the bone," she warned me with clear concern. "I'm already pretty wet as things stand right now." "That is a pretty terrible counter-argument," she pointed out. "It is the only argument I have got to work with," I told her. Neither one of us moved a single muscle for a short, heavy moment hanging in the rainy air. Eventually she slowly reached forward and accepted the umbrella from my hold. Our fingertips brushed lightly against one another for just a tiny instant during the handoff. "Why are you doing this for me?" she wondered out loud. "Why, what exactly?" I asked in return. "Why would you give this over to a total stranger?" I shrugged my shoulders casually at her question. "Because somebody ought to do something kind every once in a while." That simple answer stunned her more than anything else I had said throughout our whole brief exchange. She stared hard at me, trying desperately to figure out what sort of person would give away something useful and expect absolutely nothing in return for their trouble. "What is your name?" she asked me softly. "Austin." She repeated my name quietly under her breath, as if she wanted to lock those two syllables safely inside her memory. And what about you? What is yours? She hesitated noticeably before answering, and that small pause stuck out very sharply to my notice. Claire. Nice to make your acquaintance, Claire. Her eyes drifted over toward the umbrella she was now holding securely. I will make certain I return this back to you someday. There really is no pressure for you to do that. I said I am going to give it back, she repeated with quiet resolve in her tone. There was something about how firmly she spoke those words that made me fully believe her promise. All right then. Where will I be able to track you down? She wanted to know. I offered up a small amused smile. That is the tricky part about helping random strangers off the street. Most of the time you never cross paths ever again. Her facial features shifted, and she clearly did not enjoy hearing that particular reply. I will find you somehow, she stated confidently. I let out a short laugh at her bold declaration. That line sounds just a little bit overly dramatic if you ask me. Maybe it is, she conceded. Rain kept falling harder and harder, while passing cars rolled past and splashed puddle water all over the pavement. I stepped backward, putting a little space between our two bodies. Go find somewhere warm to dry yourself off. Austin. I froze immediately upon hearing her call my given name. Thank you. I gave her a small nod of my head. After that I turned and began walking away from her location. I told myself over and over that I would not glance backward even one single time. Yet the plain truth of the situation was that I did look back once. She remained standing right there, gripping my umbrella tight, watching my figure fade deeper and deeper into the pouring rain. I had zero clue that this fleeting ordinary night would mark the final normal moment of my entire life. When morning rolled around, I headed into Bennett Technologies expecting just another predictable run-of-the-mill workday. I could not have been more wrong about what waited ahead of me. The whole office atmosphere felt completely flipped on its head, with groups of staff clustered near the elevators whispering amongst themselves. My coworker Jake hurried straight over the second he spotted my arrival. Have you heard all the latest buzz going around? Heard about what exactly? Our brand new CEO has arrived inside the building already. I came to a sudden stop where I stood. Already here this early? Yeah, word has it she is taking full control over absolutely everything. New management policies, fresh company strategies, and there is even talk about potential staff layoffs coming down the line. I breathed out a heavy sigh of frustration. Perfect, exactly what every single person working here needed to deal with. Jake lowered his voice so only my ears could catch his words. People are saying she is absolutely ruthless when it comes to running business operations. Every incoming CEO gets those kinds of rumors floating about them. No, Austin, I mean it seriously. At her previous company, she fired 3 high-ranking executives all within a single week's time. I grabbed hold of my morning coffee cup from the counter. Sounds utterly delightful, I muttered sarcastically. Side by side we walked toward the main conference room area. Every single senior team member had already gathered inside that space. You could read nervous tension written across every face seated around that big table. I took a seat toward the very back of the large room. Several minutes ticked by before the heavy meeting door swung open wide. Instantly, every last person in the room fell dead silent. A woman stepped inside wearing a sharp dark business suit and carrying a tablet held in one hand. She radiated total self-assurance and iron-tight self-control, nothing like the vulnerable woman I encountered out in the rain last night. But the second her eyes locked directly onto mine, I knew without any room for doubt who she really was. My coffee mug nearly slipped right out of my shaky grasp. No way, this could not possibly be happening. Claire, the woman who had taken my umbrella, the woman who swore she would hunt me down. She advanced forward until she reached the front of the whole conference room. Every attendee stood up onto their feet as a sign of respect. Good morning, her voice stayed calm, polished and completely professional. I'm Claire Bennett. Effective today, I'll be the new CEO of Bennett Technologies. My heart started hammering wildly inside my chest. It was not merely the fact she turned out to be our new boss that shocked me. It was the realization she knew precisely who I was from the very start. Her gaze traveled slowly across all the assembled faces, before finally settling once more on my position. A subtle little smile tugged at her lips. This was no generic CEO grin, it was that familiar expression I had seen out in the rain. I spent a very long time searching for a certain someone. Confused murmurs rippled faintly through all the people filling that room. My stomach muscles tightened up with sharp nervousness. Claire kept right on speaking without pause. And yesterday I finally managed to locate him. Every single person's head twisted around to stare straight toward where I sat. Jake gaped at me as if I had overnight transformed into some kind of local celebrity. I could not think of a single suitable thing to say in response. Claire picked up a paper file resting upon the podium surface. Austin Carter. I rose slowly up out of my chair. Yes. She studied my face for a quiet, loaded moment. Then she spoke those fateful sentences that changed my whole world forever. I finally found you. In that exact split second, a chilling truth dawned on my mind. The woman I thought I had helped for barely 5 minutes amid heavy rainfall had been searching for me long before our random sidewalk encounter ever took place. I could not tell which feeling unnerved me more. Was it learning Claire Bennett was now my top-level CEO? Or was it watching her stay perfectly composed while dozens of pairs of eyes bored into my body from every direction? I lowered myself back down into my seat, trying my hardest to act like nothing out of the ordinary was unfolding. Of course, pulling off that neutral act proved completely impossible under these circumstances. My coworker Jake leaned his body close over toward me and whispered under his breath. Austin, what on earth have you gotten yourself mixed up in? I shot a quick look over toward him. What? You do not get publicly called out by a brand new CEO on her very first day unless you either saved her life or destroyed her whole company. And I had done neither one of those two extreme things. Jake's eyes darted from Claire over back to my face again. Then why does she carry herself like she already knows you extremely well? I offered him no reply because honestly I did not possess the answer myself. Claire carried on running through the rest of the meeting just as if that whole strange interlude had never happened. She talked through company objectives, upcoming organizational shifts, and laid out her performance expectations for every employee present. Confident, sharp-witted, she bore almost no resemblance to that helpless woman standing soaked out in the downpour the night prior. Everyone else in that room saw a powerful, commanding chief executive officer. All I could picture was the image of her clutching my umbrella, and that made this whole situation so much more tangled and complicated. Once the meeting wrapped up, people immediately began filing for the exits. Before I managed to step out through the doorway though, Claire's personal assistant blocked my path. Austin Carter. I spun around to face them. Yes. Ms. Bennett would like you to come speak with her. I should have guessed that was coming. I followed the assistant all the way into Claire's private office space. The instant that office door clicked shut behind us, the entire atmosphere shifted entirely. She was no longer fully playing the role of the authoritative CEO in that moment. At least not 100%. She glanced over toward me and wore a knowing smile. You did not recognize me straight away when I walked in the room. I folded both of my arms across my chest. I recognized you the second you stepped through that door. Really? Absolutely. Then why did you look as though you were desperate to make a run for it? A small laugh escaped from my throat. Because yesterday I handed an umbrella over to a total stranger. I never imagined that same stranger would turn up as my direct boss the very next morning. Claire strolled over toward her large office desk. I suppose that definitely counts as an unexpected twist of fate. Unexpected is one very gentle way to describe everything going on. She reached out and lifted an object sitting in one corner of her desk. It was my umbrella. I stared directly at that familiar item in complete surprise. You kept hold of this. She gazed down at the umbrella for a short while. You told me there was no requirement for me to bring it back to you. I remember every word of that conversation perfectly well. But I still wanted to return it regardless. What made it so important to you? She set the umbrella down gently on the desktop surface. Because hardly anybody has ever done something nice for me without expecting to gain something valuable in return. That answer genuinely caught me off guard. Claire Bennett ranked among the country's most accomplished young high-level executives. She owned everything most regular people could only ever fantasize about: wealth, influence, social status. Yet a simple, cheap umbrella had ended up leaving the deepest impression upon her heart. That is honestly pretty hard for me to wrap my head around. She turned her eyes to meet mine. And why is that? You are Claire Bennett after all. So what of it? People must constantly perform favors for you day in and day out. A faint smile tugged at the corners of her mouth. They act kindly toward me because they want to obtain something from my position of power. I struggled to come up with any suitable response to that statement. I understood exactly the point she was trying to get across. There exists a huge gap between being surrounded by crowds of people and actually having someone who truly cares about you as a human being. Claire lowered herself down into her office chair. I wanted to properly thank you for what you did for me. You already have thanked me. No, I really haven't. Her expression turned serious and earnest. You gave me something when I badly needed it. $10 umbrella? She shook her head from side to side. No, her voice softened and dropped to a quieter volume. You treated me like a regular human person. For a brief second, I had no clue what words I ought to say next. I cleared my throat to compose myself. Well, I'm glad that umbrella ended up helping you out. She let out a genuine, unrestrained laugh. Truthfully, that marked the first time I saw her shed the CEO persona and act her actual age. Right after that light-hearted moment, her mood hardened into seriousness all over again. Austin, I want you to join my brand new project team. A deep frown creased my forehead immediately. What did you just say? You heard me clearly. Why exactly are you picking me? I have gone through your full work history and performance records. That alone still does not explain your reasoning. It explains more than enough for me. I shook my head back and forth. Claire, office gossip is already going to start swirling non-stop because of this choice. Let them whisper whatever they feel like whispering. That is easy for you to say sitting in the CEO chair. She fixed her gaze steadily onto my face. Why do you say that? Because you hold all the power and you seem to think that means I will not face any real fallout from other employees. I held my tongue and stayed quiet for a moment. Claire leaned back against her chair. Austin, I am not offering you this opportunity purely because you gave me an umbrella in the rain. Then what is your real reason? When every single other person passed me by and ignored my suffering, you stopped and chose to notice me. Her reply troubled my mind. Not because her logic was wrong, but because I could tell she meant every single word sincerely. I appreciate the sentiment behind this, but I do not want coworkers thinking I got special treatment just for one random kind gesture. You are not receiving a promotion out of nowhere. Then what exactly is this position? You are getting given a genuine chance to prove your abilities. I looked straight into her eyes. There was no trace of arrogance or manipulative scheming within her tone, only quiet self-assurance. Even so, I still felt very uneasy about accepting straight away. I need some time to think everything over. Most individuals would jump at this offer without hesitation, yet Claire showed zero signs of disappointment. Instead, she simply smiled over in my direction. I anticipated you would react exactly like this. You did? Yes. What gave you that impression? A man willing to hand away his umbrella and trudge home through pouring rain is also the sort of man who will reject easy shortcuts in life. Her observation caught me completely off guard. She felt she understood me after only one single night together, or perhaps she spotted qualities inside myself that I had never noticed. Before I exited her office space, she called out my name. Austin. I twisted around to face her once more. Thank you for not treating me differently after learning who I really am. A small smile formed on my lips. You were Claire long before you ever became the CEO. For the very first time, genuine surprise flashed across her features. After that, she diverted her eyes away from mine. I will see you tomorrow. I walked out from her office carrying far more unanswered questions than answers in my head. But the instant I arrived back at my work desk, I quickly realized something was very off. Every single colleague's eyes were locked onto my figure. Jake wandered on over toward my workspace. Okay, what? You have got to fill me in on all the details. Fill you in on what? He pointed a finger toward one of the office display screens. A brand new announcement had popped up on the company internal message board. My name was listed as one of the lead members for Claire Bennett's very first major company project. I stared blankly at those words displayed on screen. This was not supposed to happen so fast. Jake dropped his voice down to a hushed whisper. Austin, what is going on? Half of this office believes you have some hidden secret personal connection with her. I let out a long weary sigh. Great, that is just fantastic news. And the remaining half thinks you are her absolute favorite employee around here. That scenario is somehow even worse. Jake's expression turned totally serious as he studied me. You know what strikes me as really odd here? What is it? She does not look at you the way a boss normally looks at one of their workers. I pulled a face of disapproval. Do not even start spinning those kinds of theories. I am just stating what my own two eyes are observing, he responded before walking away. Yet his remarks kept echoing around inside my thoughts. Because deep down I could not deny I had picked up on that strange dynamic as well. Later on that same afternoon, an email from Claire popped up inside my inbox. It contained only one solitary sentence. Meet me after work. There is something about yesterday you don't know. I found myself staring intently at that short message. Something about yesterday? What on earth could she possibly be referring to? I thought I was just some ordinary guy who lent an umbrella to a stranger caught in bad weather. Now though, doubts started swirling around inside my mind. Had Claire Bennett already set her sights on hiring me before she even officially took over as our CEO? My first instinct was to ignore that email entirely. It was not because I had no desire to meet up with Claire. It was because I was starting to grasp a harsh reality. Every single time I grew closer to her, my simple, uncomplicated workaday life got tangled up in chaos. Before yesterday's rainy night, I was plain old Austin Carter. I would show up for my shifts, finish my assigned projects, lend a hand to coworkers whenever they required support, then head home. Nobody paid special attention to my comings and goings. No one kept constant watch over every little move I made. Nobody speculated whether I maintained some hidden secret link to the company chief executive. Now, every time I traversed through the office halls, I could feel dozens of curious gazes weighing down on me. And Claire Bennett was the whole root cause of this shift in atmosphere. Even with all those misgivings, I still showed up for our arranged meeting once work hours finished. I found her waiting inside a tiny cafe situated right across the street from our company building. No fancy private restaurant, no lavish high-end venue for us to talk. Just a totally ordinary, down-to-earth neighborhood coffee shop. That choice alone managed to surprise me. "You actually came," she said as she spotted me approaching. I sat down in the seat directly opposite from her table. "Your note made it sound like you held something really important to tell me." "I do have something significant to share." She appeared visibly nervous, and that fact shocked me more than anything else so far. Claire Bennett never showed nervousness within high-stakes board meetings. She never hesitated when signing off on multi-million-dollar business choices. She never flinched whenever other executives challenged her plans and authority. Yet sitting across the small cafe table from me, she looked like someone struggling hard to find the right words to say out loud. "What exactly happened yesterday?" I asked her directly. She glanced down toward her coffee mug resting on the table surface. "Before I answer your question, there is something I need to ask you first." "All right, go ahead." "Do you still remember the exact words you spoke when you handed that umbrella over to me?" I thought back hard to that wet night on the sidewalk. "Something along the lines of you needing it far more than I did?" "No," she shook her head in disagreement. "You simply said that someone should." I nodded my head in recognition. "Yeah, that is right. Do you have any idea how long it has been since anybody did something for me without knowing my identity and social standing?" I kept silent because I could already tell where this conversation was heading. Claire directed her gaze out of the cafe window toward the street outside. "For countless years, everyone surrounding me learned my family name long before they ever bothered learning about my actual personality. That must have been really tough to live through." "It absolutely was." She redirected her eyes back toward my face. "Whenever new people meet me, they are always chasing one of three things: my money, my company resources, or my personal approval. And you assumed I was different purely because I had no clue you were Claire Bennett?" "Precisely." I leaned back within my chair. "So you brought me onto this project team just because I was some random guy who gave you an umbrella out in the rain?" She immediately shook her head firmly. "No, that is not the full story." "Then what is the real reasoning behind your decision?" "After I figured out exactly who you were, I dug into your work track record thoroughly." I raised one of my eyebrows in surprise. "You conducted research on me?" She let out a small amused smile. "Do not make it sound as though I hired a private detective to stalk you. That is exactly how it comes across to my ears. I reviewed your completed projects, official performance reports, and peer recommendation feedback." "And what did you end up discovering?" "I found out the man who stopped to help me in pouring rain was also the same man who quietly fixed workplace troubles without ever seeking credit for himself." I did not know how to respond to that revelation. Those small efforts were things I never imagined anybody had even noticed. At my previous place of employment, I was never the loudest voice filling up meeting rooms. I was never the person fighting tooth and nail to grab all the spotlight and praise. I simply completed all the work assigned onto my plate. Claire carried on talking without pausing. "You sorted out the messy Harrison account situation last year. That was not any big impressive achievement. It most certainly was a meaningful accomplishment. The client was furious and ready to walk away from our partnership. I just ironed out a simple misunderstanding between both sides." "Exactly my point." She leaned forward across the table toward me. "You resolved a major problem that every other person around you chose to ignore completely." I turned my gaze away from her face, feeling awkward receiving so much praise. You make me sound far better than I truly am. No, she answered without any hesitation at all. I believe other people have consistently underestimated your true capabilities. That single sentence stuck firmly inside my mind because deep down I feared she might be 100% correct. For years upon years, I had existed as the guy working behind the scenes. Always lending assistance, never uttering a word of complaint or frustration. But I certainly never anticipated someone of Claire Bennett's stature would take notice of my quiet contributions. Right then my cell phone buzzed to signal an incoming message. I glanced down and saw a text sent over from one of my fellow co-workers. Austin, you really need to see what is going on online right now. Attached alongside the text was a screenshot capture. My whole facial expression shifted the instant I processed what I was seeing. Claire picked up on my sudden change in demeanor. What just took place? I held my phone over so she could view the screen display. Some anonymous user had posted a message on the company's public discussion forum. Funny how the new CEO's first decision is promoting a random employee she met outside work. Dozens of user comments sat stacked directly underneath that original post. Several coworkers wrote messages defending my character. Others accused me of manipulating Claire to advance my own career goals. I lowered my phone back down onto the cafe tabletop. This is precisely why I did not want to get roped into this special project. Claire's expression turned icy cold. Not directed toward me but toward whoever wrote that harmful anonymous post. I'm going to handle this whole situation. No, I shook my head to protest. She stared straight at me. No. If you step in to defend me publicly, everyone will claim I only hold importance because you keep protecting me. And if I choose to stay out of it entirely, then I will deal with all the backlash on my own 2 feet. She studied my face intently for several long seconds. You always do that exact same thing. Do what exactly? You try to carry every single burden all by yourself. A faint little smile tugged my mouth. Maybe I do tend to act that way. That mindset is not always such a great trait to possess. Yet rushing in to shield other people from every difficulty that comes their way is not perfect either. For a stretch of time, we simply sat there looking directly at one another. After that quiet moment passed, Claire cracked a smile. You are such a difficult man to deal with. I have heard that particular description about myself plenty of times before. I can very well believe that is true, she replied. I let out a short laugh. But her mobile phone started ringing all of a sudden. The moment she answered the call, her whole countenance transformed. What? She listened silently to whoever spoke on the other end of the line. Gradually her features hardened into total seriousness. Who signed off on that course of action? I instantly sensed something very bad had just unfolded. Once she finished the phone call and hung up, I posed my question to her. What just happened? She did not give me an answer straight away. The board of directors has scheduled an emergency board meeting. Is this all because of that online anonymous forum post? No, she looked me dead in the eyes. One of our largest value clients has formally announced their intention to leave our company. My stomach tightened up with unease hearing that news. That is really terrible news. It is far worse than you are imagining. How could matters get any more serious? She grabbed hold of her phone once more. The client is publicly stating my leadership displays unstable judgment. And what reason are they giving for making that bold claim? Claire's eyes drifted toward the anonymous post still visible on my phone screen. Then she said something I had not anticipated hearing. Because somebody wants them to genuinely believe I am making business choices driven purely by raw emotion. Understanding washed over me in an instant. People were not only launching attacks aimed at my personal reputation. They were waging a campaign to damage Claire's authority, and they were using me as their convenient weapon. I think I should step down from the project team, I told her plainly. Claire shot me down immediately. No. Claire, please listen to me. No, her voice turned firm and unyielding. You cannot keep running away every single time someone manufactures trouble for you. I'm trying my hardest to keep you from getting hurt. She rose up out of her chair while speaking. And I am trying to make it crystal clear to you that I do not require protection from harm. Her eyes locked firmly onto mine across the table space. What I need is someone who will stand right beside me through all of this. Those words hit me harder than I ever could have predicted. This was no longer the CEO speaking official statements. This was Claire, the woman I met out there trapped inside the rain. Before we exited the cafe building, she halted my movement. Austin. Yeah. There is another critical piece of information you deserve to know. What is it? She hesitated for a brief moment. Then she spoke up and explained the real reason she lingered outside that coffee shop yesterday evening. I was not standing there waiting for someone to come pick me up with a ride. Her voice sank down to a soft murmur. I was seriously considering walking away and abandoning absolutely everything I had built. I stared at her in complete shock. You mean the whole company? Everything. I could not find any suitable words to respond with. A brand new realization dawned over my mind in that instant. The woman I thought I had saved with nothing more than an umbrella had actually been fighting to stop herself from giving up completely. And now unknown enemies were working tirelessly to push her right back to that hopeless breaking point. The emergency board meeting was scheduled to kick off at 8 o'clock the following morning. By 7:45, every single staff member working inside Bennett Technologies already knew disaster was brewing. People were no longer just feeling general nervousness. They were observing everything very closely. Watching Claire's every move, watching every choice I made. Most importantly of all, everyone waited to find out whether all those vicious rumors held any truth behind them. I walked through the doors leading into the conference room and could feel the tense shift in atmosphere right away. Several executives cut off their conversations the second I stepped into the room. That small gesture told me everything I needed to understand. That anonymous online post had accomplished exactly what its creator intended. It was not merely an assault targeting my personal good name. It had successfully planted seeds of doubt regarding Claire's business judgment inside everybody's heads. I took a seat at the far end of the big conference table, deliberately keeping my distance from the central group. That was the only small thing I still retained full control over. A handful of minutes ticked by before Claire walked through the entryway. The whole room's energy shifted instantaneously upon her arrival. She did not look jittery, nor did she appear consumed by rage. She carried the exact intimidating aura of the CEO everybody feared crossing. Let's begin this meeting. Richard Lawson, chairman of our board of directors, opened up our official discussion. Claire, before we dive into the client crisis, there is another pressing subject we must address first. I already knew precisely what topic he intended to bring up. Richard directed his gaze toward my seated position. Mr. Carter's sudden placement within your flagship major project has sparked widespread concern amongst board members. Claire maintained her composure, not shifting so much as a single muscle. Concerns built upon what actual evidence? Public perception, he replied simply. Perception alone is not a valid business justification. Richard folded both of his hands together on top of the table surface. Public perception directly impacts business performance and outcomes. I felt the urge to jump in and say something in my own defense, yet Claire stopped me with one sharp warning glance. It was not an angry glare, it was a clear signal telling me to let her handle this fight alone. She turned her full attention back toward Richard. Austin Carter was selected for this role entirely on the strength of his documented performance record. And yet the timing of this appointment still looks extremely suspicious to us. Suspicious? Yes. Richard glanced over the stack of documents laid out in front of his spot. You assumed the CEO position yesterday, and on that exact same day you announced his new role. I understood exactly what thoughts were swirling inside their minds. And I hated the fact I could not logically argue against those basic facts. Claire's eyes swept across the faces of every board member sitting around that table. Does any single person in this room hold concrete proof that Austin lacks proper qualifications for this assignment? Nobody uttered a single word in response to her question. In that case, this particular line of discussion is finished. Richard refused to back down from his stance. Claire, emotions are incredibly dangerous things when you occupy a leadership position. That remark altered her whole facial expression. He was no longer debating project staffing matters at all. He was passing judgment on her as a woman in power. I caught that tiny change. The way her hand tightened its grip around the pen she held. She despised being treated as though she was incapable of making sound, rational executive decisions. Before she got the chance to fire back a reply, I chose to speak up. Maybe it would be best if I step away from this project entirely. Every person's head spun around to look my direction. Claire immediately wheeled to face me. Austin, I am being serious right now. No, I said. I completely understand where their worries are originating from. You should not have to bear the weight of those unfair worries. But they are not 100% wrong in their observations. Her eyes narrowed in confusion. What exactly are you trying to say here? I am brand new to this project team. You hold the CEO title over this whole corporation. People will always question choices you make. I glanced around at all the assembled board members. If my continued presence becomes a constant distraction, then the whole project will suffer for it. Complete silence fell over the entire conference room space. This time I did not care one bit about that heavy silence hanging in air. I only cared about doing what I believed was the right thing to do. Claire stared intently at me for a moment. Then she said something I never anticipated hearing come from her mouth. "Do you truly believe walking away will make life simpler for me?" "Yes," I answered honestly. She shook her head in negation. "No, Austin." Her voice softened noticeably. "Running off will only make things easier for the people actively trying to destroy me." That statement grabbed every individual's full attention inside that room. Claire rose to her feet. "Someone leaked confidential details regarding my internal business decisions. Someone manipulated a critical client relationship to work against our interests. And instead of hunting down that guilty party, everyone here chooses to scrutinize the employee they deliberately targeted. Not a single person made a sound." Claire directed her words straight toward Richard Lawson. "If you insist on launching an investigation, then investigate the actual source of all these problems." The meeting concluded without any binding final resolution being reached. But the damage to reputations had already been fully done regardless. After the meeting wrapped up, I followed Claire all the way back into her private office. "You really ought not to have defended me quite so fiercely in front of the whole board." She turned to face me. "What exactly do you mean by that? Standing up for me like you did back there? Why should I not stand up for you? Because now everyone will keep believing exactly the same rumors they already bought into. And what exactly is it that they believe? That I receive special treatment purely because you care about me on a personal level." Claire's gaze locked onto mine. "And do you yourself believe that rumor holds truth?" I withheld my verbal answer because reality was tangled and complicated. I knew Claire genuinely cared about what happened to me. I was not blind to that reality. I saw the way she looked at me went far beyond purely professional boundaries. Yet that was precisely why I stayed so guarded and cautious. She occupied the CEO position, and I was merely one of her rank-and-file employees. That imbalance of power was very real and impossible to ignore. Claire took several steps to close the physical gap between us. "Austin." "Yes." "Do you think I am offering you this chance out of pity for your situation?" "No, I do not think that at all." "Then why do you keep pushing to remove yourself from this project?" Her question struck me with unexpected force. I diverted my eyes away from her face. "Because I know exactly what unfolds whenever a person in a position of power singles someone out for favor." "What unfolds then?" "Everybody automatically assumes there is some hidden underhanded motive behind it." Claire remained quiet for a good little while. Eventually she spoke up again. "Maybe the real problem is not that other people misunderstand my intentions toward you." I looked back toward her. "Maybe the real problem is that you cannot bring yourself to believe someone could genuinely choose you." I could not come up with any counter-argument, because deep down she was completely correct. Before I managed to formulate a reply to her statement, her office assistant knocked upon the door. "Miss Bennett, sorry to interrupt you too." Claire shifted her attention toward the doorway. "What has happened now?" "The client meeting arrangements have just undergone a sudden change." "How so?" "They refuse to hold discussions with you." My facial features morphed into total shock. "Then who is it that they want to speak with?" The assistant's eyes turned to point toward my position. "They have specifically requested Austin Carter attend in your place." I frowned deeply in bewilderment. "Me?" "Yes." Claire instantly pieced together what scheme was unfolding behind the scenes. "They are attempting to drive a wedge and separate the two of us." I looked over toward her. "Then perhaps I should go meet with them." Claire shook her head firmly. "Absolutely not." "Claire. This time you are not backing out because you feel afraid of what might happen." She grabbed a file folder resting upon her desk surface. "You are going to attend, but we are going together as a team." That high-stakes client meeting was scheduled to take place in only 1 hour's time. But before we could head out of the building, a shocking development altered everything. While we were walking toward the bank of building elevators, Claire's cell phone received an incoming message. She opened it up and her facial expression transformed in an instant. "What is wrong?" She passed her mobile device over into my hands for me to read. Displayed on screen was an old photograph. A younger-aged Claire stood beside another familiar figure within that picture frame. Richard Lawson. But the text message written underneath that photo sent chills running all across my skin. "Ask your new CEO why she never told you who destroyed her first company." I lifted my eyes up to meet Claire's gaze. For the very first moment since we had met, I realized there existed an entire huge chapter of her life story that she had never shared with me. I refrained from bombarding her with questions while we rode inside the elevator cabin. Not out of lack of curiosity, but because I could clearly see Claire was waging a brutal internal battle inside her own mind. This woman who could command every conversation inside a boardroom full of executives now looked like someone freshly reminded of painful memories she had spent years trying to bury. When the elevator doors slid open to our floor, she marched straight past all the nearby staff members. I hurried along close behind her. Claire. She halted her footsteps but would not twist around to face me. What is it? I held up her mobile phone. About that text message you just got. I already saw it. Who sent that message to your phone? I honestly have no idea. I could tell she was not being truthful with me. At last she turned around and looked directly at my face. Anger was not present within her expression. Instead, she just looked utterly worn out and fatigued. Do you know what I hate most about operating within the business world? What is that? Everybody believes secrets hold great value purely because they grant you power over other people. She reclaimed her phone back out of my grasp. Yet sometimes secrets are nothing more than things you feel deeply ashamed about. I chose not to press her for further details right at that moment. Not yet anyway. We climbed inside a car heading for our client meeting destination. Several minutes passed with neither one of us uttering a single word aloud. Finally Claire broke that heavy silence. My first company collapsed and failed 3 years ago. I directed my eyes toward her. I never had any knowledge of that fact. Most people do not know that piece of my past history. What exactly went wrong back then? She stared blankly out of the car window toward passing city scenery. I placed my trust in the wrong individual. I waited patiently for her to elaborate further. Richard Lawson. That name immediately clicked everything into place for me. The chairman of our board? She nodded her head slowly. He used to be my mentor. That revelation genuinely surprised me. Claire Bennett did not strike you as somebody who would ever require guidance from a mentor figure. But every single person has to start somewhere at the very beginning. He helped me build my first company from absolute scratch. He introduced me to potential investors, taught me negotiation techniques, and convinced me he wholeheartedly believed in my vision. And after gaining all of my trust, he took everything I had worked so hard to build away from me. Her voice grew colder as she recounted those painful memories. He leaked private internal data straight over to our competitors. He convinced investors I possessed far too little experience to run a successful business. Within 3 short months, my whole company crumbled completely. A deep frown settled onto my face. Then why is he still occupying such a powerful position here? Because he was extremely careful covering up every single trace of his misconduct. I fully understood the gravity of that situation. Inside the business sphere, personal reputation counted for absolutely everything. Without hard, tangible proof, accusations did not carry any real weight. And the day I stepped into this office as the new CEO, he realized I had made my return, Claire explained. She nodded in confirmation. Which meant he needed to find some method to regain control over the unfolding situation. I glanced toward her mobile phone device. By making everyone believe you are making irrational emotional choices all because of me? Precisely, she replied. I leaned back against my car seat cushion. So basically I am being used as a weapon against you. Claire looked over toward me sharply. No, Claire. No, she spoke in a firm, resolute tone. You are not a weapon to be wielded by anybody. Then what exactly am I in all of this chaos? She did not provide an instant answer to my question. Somehow that thoughtful pause hit harder than any immediate reply could have managed. Upon arriving for the client meeting, tension already saturated the whole meeting room atmosphere. Daniel Whitmore, the CEO representing our client company, did not even bother rising to his feet when we entered the room. Miss Bennett. Daniel. His eyes shifted over to focus on my physical presence. And this gentleman must be Austin Carter. I know exactly who you are, he responded. That reply immediately grabbed my full attention. You know who I am? Daniel wore a thin smile across his face. Everybody knows who you are at this point in time. I really disliked the underlying tone he used when saying those words. We sat down into our respective chairs to begin discussions. The meeting opened following proper professional formalities. But within 10 short minutes, it became glaringly obvious. Daniel had zero genuine interest in conducting actual business negotiations. His sole goal was to heap pressure down upon us. Claire, your leadership style has shifted dramatically ever since you took command of this corporation. That statement is factually incorrect. Is it really? He threw a quick glance in my direction. Your very first major business decision involved bringing in someone you already know on a personal level. I kept my mouth shut and remained silent. Claire responded to his insinuation. Austin was selected based entirely upon his professional qualifications. Daniel smiled in a knowing, cynical way. That is what every person always says in these kinds of scenarios. My patience was rapidly wearing thin. Before I could open my mouth to speak, Claire set her hand flat down upon the meeting table surface. She was not touching my body, it was only a subtle nonverbal signal. Stay calm and keep your temper in check. After that she turned her full attention toward Daniel. Are we gathered here to talk through our contract agreement, or are we here just to trade office gossip? His facial expression altered right away. For the first time, somebody had dared to push back against his provocations. We are here because my company requires solid confidence in yours. And you believe spreading unsubstantiated rumors helps build confidence? No, he leaned forward across the table toward us. I believe radical transparency is what builds real confidence between partners. Claire's lips tugged upward into a faint smirk. Interesting point of view. What is so interesting about that? If transparency matters so tremendously to you, why have you not mentioned your private off-the-record meeting with Richard Lawson last week? The energy inside that meeting room transformed in a split second. Daniel froze completely in his chair. I shot a look across toward Claire. She had known about that secret meeting all along. Daniel's face turned visibly uncomfortable. That meeting bears no relevance to our current discussions. Does it truly not? Claire opened up one of her paper file folders. You met with Richard 2 full days prior to notifying us you planned to cancel our contractual partnership. Daniel could not find a single thing to say in his own defense. And now you stand here questioning the soundness of my business judgments? Our client CEO's face flushed with anger. Yet he also looked like a man caught red-handed in deception. The truth finally clicked into place for me. Claire had not only been defending herself in the moment. She had been preparing for this exact confrontation all along. This meeting concluded in a way no one had anticipated. Daniel did not formally cancel our business contract. Instead, he requested an additional week's time to go over our agreement documents one more time. Once we stepped outside of that office building, I turned toward Claire. You knew all about that secret meeting ahead of time. Yes, I was aware of it. So why hold that information back until right this second? Because I needed solid, irrefutable proof before I made any accusations public. I nodded my head. That logic makes perfect sense. She looked straight over toward my face. You are not angry with me for keeping secrets? What reason would I have to feel angry? Because I did not tell you every detail of my past life. I pondered over her words briefly before answering honestly. I was curious about those events, that is all. Surprise registered across her features. That is genuinely all? Yes, that is really all. You do not feel betrayed by my silence? No, why would I feel betrayed? I offered up a small gentle smile. We only met each other 2 short days ago, Claire. She stared back at me. You do not owe me your entire life story. Something shifted deep within her facial expression. She had fully expected anger from my side, not understanding and acceptance. Right about then her mobile phone began to ring. She picked it up and answered the call. Hello. Only 5 seconds passed and her whole demeanor changed. What? She listened intently to the voice on the other end of the phone line. Afterward she lifted her eyes to look at me. Could you please repeat that information once more? A short pause followed. What do you mean all those documents are gone? A cold, tight feeling settled inside my stomach. What has happened? Claire brought the phone call to an end. The evidence files that prove Richard betrayed me. What state are those files in now? Someone broke into our secure legal archive storage area. And what was the outcome of that break-in? She locked eyes with mine. The files containing proof of his betrayal have vanished without a trace. I stared at her in complete disbelief. Which means somebody knew precisely what kind of evidence we were searching for. Claire gave me a confirming nod. Then she spoke words that made my chest feel heavy and constricted. This was never only about destroying my old company. Then what was their actual objective? Her gaze met mine unflinchingly. They wanted to guarantee that you and I would never get the opportunity to uncover the full truth. At that very moment, a chilling realization washed over my mind. I thought I had stumbled accidentally into Claire Bennett's complicated world. But some unknown third party had been observing both of us right from the very beginning. And they were not afraid of the CEO's power and authority. They feared what would happen once Claire finally learned how to place her trust in another human being. Those missing documents rewrote everything we thought we understood. Prior to this discovery, I believed we were merely dealing with standard corporate attacks. A rival corporation aiming to inflict harm on Bennett Technologies. A former mentor desperate to safeguard his own damaged reputation. A board member scheming to weaken Claire's authority and standing. But losing those critical files made one fact crystal clear. Certain individuals were not content with merely defeating Claire in business. They wanted to wipe away the truth completely from existence. And somehow, I had gotten dragged right into the heart of this brutal conflict. Early the next morning, Claire summoned me to her office before any other employees had arrived for work. When I walked through her doorway, she was already hard at work. No freshly brewed coffee sat on her desk, no casual small talk exchanged between us. Dozens upon dozens of documents were scattered all across the surface of her desk. "You did not get any sleep last night?" It was not phrased as a genuine question. She lifted her head upward to look at me. "Neither did you manage to sleep, I would wager. I am not the one holding down the CEO position." "No, you are not," she agreed. She returned her focus back toward all the paperwork spread out before her. "But you are the reason certain people are trying to make my whole life a living nightmare." That statement irritated me deeply. "Claire." She cut me off before I could say anything further. "I already know exactly what you are about to say." "Oh really? You are going to argue that you ought to withdraw from this project entirely." I kept silent, because her prediction was 100% accurate. She let out a heavy, weary sigh. "Austin, you cannot keep offering yourself up as a quick-fix solution every single time trouble pops up. And you cannot keep pretending that absolutely none of these stressful events affect you emotionally." That remark made her look straight back into my eyes. For a little while neither of us spoke a single syllable. After that she leaned backwards within her office chair. "You are correct." I truly did not anticipate hearing those words come out of her mouth. For Claire Bennett to admit another person held correct opinions was rarer than a corporation surviving a hostile takeover attempt. I'm not very skilled when it comes to this sort of thing. When it comes to what exactly? Allowing other people to step in and offer me help and support. I moved a couple of steps closer toward her desk. "Why is that so difficult for you?" Her gaze drifted down toward the desktop. "Because every single individual I have ever placed my faith in ultimately wanted to extract something valuable from me." Her voice grew quieter as she spoke. "Richard was by far the worst offender out of all of them." I drew even nearer to her position. "Claire." She lifted her head to meet my eyes. "He was not merely my business associate and partner. I had considered him part of my family circle." That single fact explained so much about her behavior. All that simmering anger, her tendency to keep others at arm's length, the high defensive walls she had built all around herself. "He convinced you that everybody will eventually abandon you." "Yes," she whispered. I nodded my head thoughtfully. "But I am nothing like Richard." "I know you are not. Do you really know that deep inside your heart?" She did not provide a verbal response. And that silence was answer enough all on its own. I sat down in a chair positioned across from her desk. "In that case, let me offer you my help. You really do not have to put yourself on the line for me." I pulled on a faint, knowing smile across my face. Sure, that might be true, yet that does not always turn out for the best. Trying to shield every single person from every bit of trouble is never the perfect answer either. We sat there for a brief stretch, just locking eyes with one another in complete silence. Then the corners of Claire's mouth tugged upward into a soft grin. "You are such a hard person to get through to," she commented. "I have heard that exact line about myself plenty of times before. And I can definitely believe every word of it," I chuckled out loud. Right at that moment her mobile phone burst out ringing, cutting through our quiet moment. The second she picked up the call, every trace of ease vanished off her features. "What on earth is going on?" she questioned into the receiver. She held her tongue, simply listening intently to whatever voice was speaking on the other end. Slowly her whole expression hardened into a grave, serious mask. "Who gave authorization for this to go through?" Alarm bells instantly went off inside my head, telling me something terrible was unfolding. Once she finally hung up the phone, I shot her a quick, urgent question. "What just took place?" She did not rush to give me a reply straight away. "The board of directors has called for an emergency meeting to be held. Is this all because of that anonymous online post that went viral?" She shook her head and directed her gaze straight toward me. It stems from one of our most high-value major clients, who has just announced their plan to walk away from us entirely. A sharp, sickening tightness coiled deep within my stomach upon hearing that devastating news. That is absolutely catastrophic for our whole operation. It is far worse than you could even begin to imagine. What do you mean by that? She reached out and grabbed her handset once more. The client is claiming that my leadership position has become wildly unstable. But what could have possibly led them to come up with such a claim? Claire's gaze drifted over toward that anonymous post displayed across my screen. Next came a statement I never saw coming, which sent my mind racing. Somebody is feeding them lies, convincing everyone that I am making major business choices driven purely by raw emotion. The full picture clicked inside my brain in an instant. This enemy was not only waging a personal attack against me. They were launching their real assault straight at Claire. And I was nothing more than the convenient tool they chose to carry out their malicious scheme. I need to step back and remove myself from this project right now, I told her firmly. Claire's eyes locked onto mine without the slightest hint of hesitation. No. Claire, please, you have to listen to me. No. Her tone remained unshakable, filled with unwavering resolve. You cannot keep running for cover every single time someone manufactures a crisis to hurt you. All I am trying to accomplish is keeping you safe from all this fallout. She rose up onto her feet from her seat. And what I am trying to make you understand is I do not require you to shield me. Our gazes met and held steady against one another. What I actually need is a person who will stand right beside my side. Those simple words struck me far harder than I ever anticipated they would. This was no cold, calculating CEO delivering corporate talking points. This was Claire, just the woman wearing that ring upon her finger. Before we exited that cafe location, she held me back before I could walk out. Austin. Yeah, what is it? There is critical information you ought to be aware of. What sort of information? She hesitated for a short beat, weighing her words carefully. She then began to explain the real reason I was lingering outside that coffee shop yesterday. I waited patiently for her to continue her story. I was not standing around out there waiting for someone to come pick me up for a ride. Her voice dropped down to a much quieter, more vulnerable volume. I was seriously contemplating walking away and abandoning absolutely everything I had built. My eyes widened as I stared over toward her in genuine surprise. You mean the entire company business? Everything without exception. I drew a blank, not knowing what appropriate words I could possibly say in response. A sudden realization washed heavy over my mind. The woman I thought I had rescued with nothing more than an umbrella might have been fighting hard to stop herself from giving up completely. And now some unknown adversary was striving to push her right back into that dark, hopeless state all over again. The emergency board meeting was scheduled to kick off at 8 o'clock the following morning. By 7:45, every single employee inside Bennett Technologies already sensed that disaster was brewing. Staff members were no longer merely feeling nervous and on edge. Every pair of eyes was watching closely. They were observing Claire's every move, and they were keeping close tabs on me as well. Above everything else, everyone was eager to find out whether all those swirling rumors held any truth. As I stepped foot inside the conference room, I could immediately feel the heavy, tense shift in atmosphere. Several high-ranking executives fell silent the very second I walked through the doorway. That small reaction alone told me everything I needed to know about the current situation. That anonymous online post had accomplished exactly what its creator intended. This was not merely an attempt to ruin my personal reputation. It had successfully planted seeds of doubt regarding Claire's power of judgment. I took a seat at the far end of the long table, keeping a deliberate distance from everyone else. That was the only thing within my power to control in this messy scenario. A handful of minutes ticked by, and then Claire made her entrance into the room. The whole dynamic inside the space transformed in the blink of an eye. There was no trace of nervousness written across her face, nor any flicker of burning anger. She carried herself exactly like the formidable CEO that all these people feared. "Let us get this meeting underway," she announced plainly. Richard Lawson, the board chairman, took charge of the discussion. "Claire, before we dive into the troubles with our departing client, there is another subject we must bring up." I already had a clear sense of exactly where this conversation was heading. Richard turned his full attention and gazed directly onto me. "Mr. Carter's abrupt involvement within your very first major project has sparked widespread concerns among board members." Claire maintained her composure, not shifting an inch in her chair. "And what exactly are those concerns founded upon?" Public perception and outside appearances, he replied. That hardly counts as a legitimate business-related justification. Richard folded both of his hands together atop the table surface. Public perception carries real-world weight and impacts business outcomes. I felt the urge to speak up and defend myself, yet Claire shot me one sharp glance. It was not an angry look, but a clear warning signal telling me to hold back. Allow me to handle this matter on my own, she communicated through that silent stare. She redirected her focus back toward Richard. Austin Carter earned this position based on his proven track record of performance. Even so, the timing of this whole situation looks extremely suspicious. Suspicious? Yes, it most certainly does. Richard glanced down at the stack of documents laid out in front of his spot. You officially became CEO yesterday, and that was the exact same day you announced his promotion. I could read exactly what was running through their minds, and I hated the fact I could not refute these hard facts. Claire slowly swept her eyes across every single person seated around the table. Does anybody present possess concrete proof proving Austin is unqualified for this role? Not a single person in the room offered up a reply. Then this particular line of discussion is officially closed. Richard refused to back down from his stance in the slightest. Claire, raw emotions are incredibly dangerous when you hold a leadership position. That single remark altered her whole demeanor in an instant. He was no longer debating the merits of this business project. His words were aimed straight at her personally. I spotted that tiny, almost imperceptible change. I noticed how her fingers tightened their grip around the pen she was holding. She absolutely despised being treated as though she was incapable of making sound choices. But before she could fire back a response, I decided to speak up first. Maybe it would be best if I step aside from this role. Every single person in that room instantly swiveled their eyes over toward me. Claire spun toward me right away. Austin, I mean what I am saying. No, hold on, I can understand where these people's worries are coming from. You should not have to bear the burden of this pressure. Yet their worries are not entirely without merit. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she studied my face. What point are you trying to make here exactly? I am still brand new to working within this team. You occupy the CEO's office and people will always second-guess every call you make. I cast my gaze around the full circle of assembled executives. If my continued presence turns into a major distraction, then this whole project will suffer for it. A heavy hush descended all throughout the conference room. Still, I paid no mind to that awkward silence. My priority was making the correct call. Claire kept her gaze locked firmly on me. Then she uttered something I had never anticipated hearing. Do you honestly believe walking away will make everything simpler for me? Yes, that is what I truly think. She shook her head from side to side. No, Austin. Her voice softened a little bit as she carried on talking. This will only make things far more convenient for the individuals who are out to hurt me. Those words grabbed the complete attention of every person sitting there. Claire pushed herself up to her feet. Somebody has leaked confidential details about my internal company decisions. Somebody has manipulated and wrecked a valuable client partnership. And instead of hunting down that guilty party, everyone here chooses to question the employee they targeted. Nobody uttered a single word in reply. Claire's eyes settled onto Richard's position. If you insist on launching an investigation, then investigate the actual source of these troubles. The meeting wrapped up without reaching any final official verdict, yet the damage had already been done. Once it was over, I trailed Claire all the way back into her private office. You really ought not to have defended me in front of that whole group. She whirled around to face me. What exactly are you accusing me of doing? Going out of your way to stand up for me like that? Why would you do such a thing? Because now everyone is just going to confirm all those beliefs they already held deep down. And what beliefs are those? That I only hold my position because you personally care about me. Claire looked straight into my eyes. And do you yourself actually believe that to be the truth? I chose not to give her an answer, since reality was tangled and complicated. I was not blind. I could clearly tell Claire did genuinely care for me. I could see the way she looked at me went well beyond purely professional boundaries. That was precisely why I stayed so cautious and guarded all this time. She was the chief executive officer while I was merely one of her employees. That gap in power between us was undeniably real. Claire took a couple of steps to draw herself closer toward me. Austin. Yes. Do you imagine I am offering you my support purely out of pity? No, I do not think that at all. Then why do you keep pushing to walk away from everything? That question hit me far harder than I had expected it would. I diverted my eyes and looked off to the side. Because I know exactly how these scenarios play out when a person in power picks someone. What sort of scenarios? Everyone immediately jumps to assume there is some hidden, self-serving motive. Claire remained quiet for a short moment to process my words. Afterward she spoke up. Maybe the real issue is not that other people misjudge me. I lifted my eyes to meet hers. Maybe the real problem lies in the fact you cannot accept that someone could genuinely choose you. I had no suitable comeback for that statement, because she was completely right. Before I managed to formulate a response, her office assistant knocked upon the door. "Miss Bennett, I am so sorry for this interruption." Claire turned toward the doorway. "What has occurred?" "Plans for the client meeting have just undergone a sudden change." "In what way have they changed?" "They refuse to hold discussions with you any longer." My facial expression shifted with surprise upon hearing that update. "Then who exactly is it they want to speak with?" The assistant directed their gaze over in my direction. "They are requesting for Austin Carter to attend in your place." I frowned in complete bewilderment. "Me? Are you certain?" "Yes, that is their explicit request." Claire grasped the full scheme right then and there. "Our enemies are making yet another calculated move against us. Their whole goal is to drive a wedge and split the two of us apart." I glanced over toward her. "In that case, perhaps I should go and attend this meeting." Claire shook her head firmly. "No. Claire, listen to me. This time you are not going out there because you are running away out of fear." She snatched a file folder off the surface of her desk. "You are coming along because we are heading into this together as a team." The client meeting was scheduled to kick off in just one short hour. But before we could depart, a shocking incident unfolded that would rewrite everything. We were walking toward the elevator when a new message popped up onto Claire's phone screen. She unlocked and opened the message, and her countenance transformed instantly. "What is it that you are seeing?" She extended her hand and passed the mobile device over to me. Displayed on the screen was an old photograph. It pictured Claire from years in the past, standing side by side with another recognizable figure. That person was Richard Lawson, a man whose name I knew very well. Yet the text message written underneath the snapshot is what sent chills running through my veins. "Ask your brand new CEO why she never told you who destroyed her very first company." I lifted my gaze to look at Claire and she met my stare. For the very first time since we met, I realized there was a huge chapter of her life she had never shared with me. I held back from bombarding her with questions while we rode inside the elevator. It was not that curiosity was absent inside my mind. I could plainly observe Claire was locked in a fierce internal battle within her own thoughts. This woman who could walk into a room crowded with executives and command every single conversation now looked haunted. She appeared as if some long-buried painful memory had just been dragged back to the surface. Once the elevator doors slid open, she strode straight past all the office staff milling about. I hurried along, following closely behind her. "Claire." She came to a halt, yet she did not twist around to face me. "What is it?" I lifted up her phone in my hand. "That message you received. I already know about it." "Who was the person responsible for sending it to you?" "I have no clue." "That cannot possibly be the honest truth." At long last she turned her head to look at me. There was no trace of anger within her features, only heavy exhaustion. "Do you want to know what I detest most about the corporate business world?" "What is it?" "Everybody assumes secrets hold value simply because they grant you power over others." She reclaimed her phone back out of my grasp. "But sometimes secrets are nothing more than things you feel deeply ashamed about." I chose not to press her for further details, at least not for the time being. We climbed inside the car that would take us to the critical client meeting. Several long minutes slipped by, and neither one of us uttered a single word. Eventually Claire broke that heavy silence. "My first company collapsed and failed 3 years ago." I directed my eyes over toward her. "I had absolutely no idea that part of your history. The vast majority of people do not know that story. So what exactly happened back then?" Her gaze drifted out the car window toward the passing scenery. "I placed my trust in the wrong individual." I waited patiently for her to keep unfolding her story. That man was Richard Lawson. That familiar name immediately clicked everything into place inside my brain. "The chairman of our board of directors?" She nodded her head slowly. "He used to be my personal mentor." This revelation genuinely caught me off guard. Claire Bennett struck me as the kind of powerful woman who would never require a mentor figure. Even so, every single person has to start somewhere in their journey. He assisted me in building up my original company from the ground up. He connected me with investors, coached me through negotiation tactics. He made me fully believe he had genuine faith in my capabilities. And then he proceeded to take absolutely everything away from me. Her tone of voice turned noticeably colder as she recounted these painful events. He leaked confidential data straight to our competing businesses. He convinced all the investors that I was far too inexperienced for the role. Within a period of merely 3 months, my whole company crumbled completely. My brows drew together in a deep frown. If that is the case, why is he still occupying such a high-ranking position here? Because he executed every step with extreme carefulness. She looked me directly in the eyes. He never left behind any tangible fingerprints that could be used against him. I understood perfectly well how this world operated. Within business circles, your reputation is worth more than nearly anything else. Without solid proof, accusations do not carry any real weight at all. And the moment I stepped into the CEO role yesterday, he realized you had re-entered the picture. Claire gave a small nod of confirmation. That left him needing some method to seize back control over the whole situation. I glanced down toward the phone sitting between us. So he manufactured lies to make everyone think you are making emotional choices all because of me. Precisely, she affirmed. I leaned my body back against the car seat. Which means I am being used as a weapon in his schemes. Claire's response came right away. No. Claire, be realistic. No. Her tone stayed firm and resolute. You are not a weapon of any sort. Then what exactly am I in all of this? She did not supply an instant answer. Oddly enough, that pause held far more weight than any quick reply could have managed. When we pulled up and arrived for the client meeting, tension already hung thick in the surrounding air. Daniel Whitmore, the client's chief executive, did not even bother to stand up upon our arrival. Miss Bennett. Daniel. His eyes shifted over to land on me. And this must be Austin Carter. I know who you are. That short reply instantly grabbed my full attention. You already know who I am? Daniel stretched across his face a thin smile. Everybody knows your name around these parts now. I really disliked the underlying tone behind those words he spoke. We took our respective seats and the meeting got underway in a professional fashion. Yet it took no more than 10 minutes for reality to reveal itself. Daniel had zero genuine interest in conducting actual business discussions. His whole objective was to pile pressure onto our shoulders. Claire, your leadership style has undergone massive shifts ever since you took charge. That statement is completely inaccurate. Is it truly? He darted another glance over toward my direction. Your very first major decision was bringing in someone you hold personal connections with. I kept my mouth shut and remained silent. Claire handled the response. Austin was selected purely on the strength of his qualifications. Daniel wore a smug smile on his face. That is what every person always claims. I could feel my patience wearing extremely thin. But before I could open my mouth to speak, Claire rested her hand flat down upon the tabletop. She was not touching me at all, it was only a quiet signal. Remain calm and keep your composure. After that she turned her attention toward Daniel. Have we gathered here to go over contract terms, or are we just here to trade idle gossip? His facial expression shifted in reaction. Good, for once somebody has dared to challenge him. We are here because my company needs to feel confident in yours. And you believe rumors are capable of building that confidence? No. He leaned his upper body forward across the table. I believe full transparency is what builds real confidence. Claire's lips tugged upward into a faint smile. That is quite an interesting viewpoint. What do you mean? If transparency matters so greatly to you, why have you stayed quiet regarding your private meeting with Richard Lawson last week? The energy inside that room transformed in an instant. Daniel froze up completely on the spot. I shot a look toward Claire. She had known about this secret meeting all along. Daniel's features turned visibly uncomfortable. That subject has no relevance to what we are discussing. Does it not? Claire opened up one of her file folders. You met with Richard merely 2 days before you moved to cancel our contract. Daniel failed to offer any kind of retort. And now you stand here questioning the soundness of my business judgments? The client CEO's face flushed with anger. At the same time, he looked like a man caught completely red-handed. Everything finally clicked into place inside my mind. Claire was not merely defending herself in this room. She had been meticulously preparing for this confrontation all along. The meeting concluded in a way no one had anticipated. Daniel did not go through with canceling our contract. Instead, he requested an additional week to thoroughly review the full agreement. Once we stepped outside of that office building, I turned toward Claire. You were aware of that secret meeting between Daniel and Richard the whole time? Yes, I was. Then why hold back that information from me earlier? Because I needed to gather hard, tangible proof first. I nodded my head. That reasoning made total sense. Are you not upset with me? What reason would I have to feel angry? Since I chose not to tell you every single detail about my past. I gave it a moment of thought before answering her honestly. I was curious about it, nothing more. She appeared genuinely surprised by my reply. That is all you feel? Just curiosity? Yes, that is genuinely all. You do not feel betrayed in any way? No. What is the reason behind that? A faint smile formed on my lips. Claire, we only met with each other 2 short days ago. She looked over toward me. You do not owe me your entire life story. Something subtle shifted within her facial expression. It seemed as though she had expected bitterness, not understanding. Right then her phone began to ring. She picked up the call. Hello. Her whole demeanor altered after only 5 brief seconds. What? She listened intently to the voice on the other end. Then she turned her eyes toward me. Could you repeat that for me? There came a short pause. What do you mean all the documents have disappeared? A tight, uneasy feeling settled in my stomach. What kind of trouble has sprung up now? Claire brought the phone call to an end. The evidence we had gathered against Richard. What about those files? Somebody has broken into our legal archive storage area. And what came of that? She looked straight at me. Every file holding proof of his betrayal against me has vanished without a trace. I stared right at her in stunned disbelief. Which means someone knew precisely what kind of evidence we were hunting for. Claire gave a solemn nod of her head. Then she spoke words that made my chest constrict with tension. This was never only about destroying my company. If that was not the goal, then what were they aiming for? Her eyes locked firmly onto mine. Their goal was ensuring you and I would never get the opportunity to uncover the truth. At that precise moment, a realization washed over me. I used to think I stumbled into Claire Bennett's life purely by random chance. But there was another party observing our every move right from the very start. They felt no fear of the powerful CEO. What truly frightened them was the outcome once Claire finally placed her trust in another human being. Those missing documents rewrote the nature of this whole conflict. Prior to this, I thought we were dealing with a standard corporate attack. I imagined it was a rival corporation trying to harm Bennett Technologies. Or a disgruntled former mentor striving to preserve his own reputation. Or a board member aiming to weaken Claire's standing within the company. Losing those critical files laid one harsh truth completely bare. The enemy was not satisfied with simply defeating Claire. They intended to wipe away every last trace of the truth entirely. And somehow, I had become fully pulled into this brutal fight alongside her. The following morning, Claire summoned me to her office before any other staff had arrived. When I walked through her doorway, she was already hard at work. There was no brewed coffee ready, no casual small talk exchanged between us. Dozens upon dozens of documents were spread all across the surface of her desk. You did not get any sleep last night. It was not framed as an actual question. She lifted her head up to glance at me. Neither did you. I am not the one holding the CEO position. No, you are not. She returned her focus back down onto her paperwork. Yet you are the exact reason why certain people are determined to make my life a living nightmare. That statement stung and bothered me deeply. Claire. She cut me off before I could say more. I already know exactly what you are about to say. Do you really? You are going to argue that I ought to step down from everything. I stayed completely silent because she had guessed my thoughts perfectly. She let out a heavy sigh. Austin, you cannot keep offering yourself up as the solution every time disaster strikes. And you cannot pretend none of these terrible events take an emotional toll on you. That remark made her raise her gaze once more to meet mine. For a little while, neither one of us spoke a single syllable. After that, she leaned back within her office chair. You are right about that. I had not anticipated hearing those words come out of her mouth. For Claire Bennett to admit another person was right was rarer than a company surviving a hostile takeover attempt. I'm not very skilled when it comes to this sort of thing. Skilled at what exactly? Allowing other individuals to lend me a helping hand. I looked across toward her. What holds you back? Her gaze drifted down toward her desk. Every single person I have ever trusted always ended up wanting something in return from me. Her voice grew softer and more subdued. Richard was by far the worst offender out of all of them. I took a few steps, moving closer to where she sat. Claire. She lifted her eyes to look back at me. He was more than merely my business associate. I genuinely considered him as part of my family. That single fact explained so much. It explained her anger, her emotional distance, the defensive walls she built all around herself. He convinced you that every person will eventually walk away. Yes. I nodded my head in understanding. But I am nothing like Richard. I know you are not. Are you truly convinced of that? She failed to give me a verbal reply. That silence in itself was answer enough for me. I sat down in the chair opposite her desk. Then allow me to offer you my assistance. You really do not have to put yourself through this risk. I understand that reality. Other people might misinterpret our bond. I know. You could very well end up losing your job position. I know. She kept her eyes fixed steadily on my face. Then why are you still willing to do all of this? I gave her a gentle smile. Because somebody ought to stand by your side. For a split second, her expression suggested she had heard those exact words before. And indeed she had, out in the pouring rain. Those were the very words that set everything in motion between us. Only this time they carried a far deeper, more meaningful weight. Claire shifted her eyes, looking away from me. Your biggest flaw is you fail to realize just how rare of a person you really are. I let out a short laugh. My biggest problem is that my CEO keeps coming out with these strange remarks. I am being completely serious. So am I. That comment finally drew a real smile out from her. For just a fleeting moment, all the crushing pressure faded away. However, that peace did not last long, for an hour later we uncovered something far more horrifying. The missing files were not the only items that had been stolen. An unknown party had gained entry into the company's internal digital system. Worse still, they carried out this intrusion by using my employee login credentials. I stared in horror at the information displayed on the screen. No. Claire's eyes locked onto mine. What is wrong? It is my user account. The security report clearly shows my login details were utilized. Somebody broke into our systems posing as me. Every single person within this company will automatically assume I played a part in this crime. Claire grasped the malicious plot instantly. They are trying to frame you for these crimes. I nodded my head. They intend to make the board believe I aided you in destroying critical evidence. Her facial features hardened, turning icy cold. In that case, they have severely underestimated the two of us. I looked at her. Yes, us. That particular word genuinely surprised me. Claire did not say my team, she said us. Within a matter of hours, word had spread through the entire company building. Rumors traveled far faster than verified facts could ever manage. People whispered under their breath whenever I walked past their workstations. Some coworkers actively avoided making any sort of eye contact with me. Others stared at me as if I was already proven guilty of the crime. Jake caught up with me close to the bank of elevators. Austin. I turned around to face him. Are you doing all right? I offered up a small smile. That depends. Depends on what exactly? Depends on whether you believe I would hack into my own place of employment. He immediately shook his head from side to side. Of course I do not. What makes you so certain? Because you are absolutely terrible at telling lies. I let out a quiet laugh. That is your reasoning? No. Jake's tone shifted, growing completely earnest. I have worked alongside you for 3 full years now. You are that person who stays late after hours fixing issues nobody else even notices. Those words meant more to me than he could possibly realize. Before I could respond to him, Claire came walking in our direction. All the surrounding staff instantly fell dead silent. She paid zero attention to all those watching eyes. She came to a stop right beside my position. Austin. Yes. Come along with me. We proceeded to walk into the conference room space. Inside sat every single member of the board of directors. Richard was present among them as well. The instant his eyes landed on me, a smile spread across his face. It was not a friendly grin, it was brimming with arrogant confidence. I suppose this is where we address this most unfortunate incident. Claire took her assigned seat. Yes, it is. Richard's gaze turned toward me. Austin, I hope you comprehend how grave this situation truly is. I met his stare. I fully understand. Misusing your system access to erase confidential company data could result in legal repercussions. Before I could voice a rebuttal, Claire cut in and spoke up. How incredibly fascinating. Richard twisted toward her. What did you say? You appear utterly convinced that Austin is the guilty party. That is because the evidence points straight toward him. No. She interrupted his statement. The evidence only proves some individual made use of his account login. Richard smiled smugly. Then who else could it possibly have been? Claire opened up a manila folder in front of her. Someone who already possessed system access long before Austin joined us. Richard's facial expression underwent a tiny, almost unnoticeable change. Even so, I caught sight of it. Claire saw it too. She carried on with her statement. A person who knows every single inner working of this company inside and out. Richard leaned forward across the table surface. Are you daring to level an accusation against me? What I am saying is we ought to investigate every single person without exception. Tension spiked sharply throughout the whole room. After that, Richard pushed himself up onto his feet. Claire, you are making a huge, costly mistake. She looked back toward him, remaining perfectly calm. No. For the first time in many years, I am no longer making choices driven by fear. That powerful line impacted every soul in that room, Richard included. Once the meeting concluded, I followed Claire outside into the hallway. You had actual proof in your possession. Not enough solid proof to take him down completely. Then why provoke him like that during the meeting? I needed to observe his genuine reaction. She looked over toward me. And he is scared right now. I nodded my head. That is good news. Yet Claire did not look relieved in the slightest. She appeared deeply troubled. What is weighing on your mind? She hesitated for a moment, then held out a slip of paper toward me. What is this item? A note somebody left behind inside my office. I read the short message written upon it. You found the man with the umbrella. Now watch him leave you too. My countenance darkened upon reading those words. Claire directed her eyes toward me. Their goal is no longer to bring about the collapse of my company. I reread that threatening note once more. Then what are they hoping to accomplish? Her answer came out in a soft, quiet murmur. They want to prove that I was wrong to place my trust in you. For the first time since meeting Claire, I understood this conflict was no longer purely business-related. Somebody aimed to shatter the one precious thing Claire had finally allowed herself to possess: trust. That threatening note lingered heavy on my thoughts all throughout the night. You found the man with the umbrella. Now watch him leave you too. This was more than a generic warning. It was deeply personal. Whoever was behind this knew exactly how Claire and I first crossed paths. They knew that simple act of kindness became the foundation for her trust in me. That could only mean one thing. Someone had kept watch over us from day one. The next morning, I arrived at the office building far earlier than my usual time. I was determined to dig up some real answers. But before I managed to reach my own desk, I noticed something extremely strange. Staff members were no longer whispering amongst themselves. Every pair of eyes was glued onto the digital display screens mounted on the walls. The company's internal announcement board had been updated. A brand new official notice posted under Claire Bennett's name was visible for everyone. I pulled up and read through the announcement. Internal investigation has confirmed that Austin Carter was not involved in any unauthorized system access. All allegations raised against him are entirely false. I stared at the screen in front of me. Then I glanced around to observe every employee reading that very same notice. Claire had publicly cleared my name for the whole company to witness. She was under no obligation to take such public action. She could have quietly sorted this whole matter out behind closed doors. Instead, she chose to ensure every last person learned the truth. Seconds later, my mobile phone started ringing. Austin, please come to my office right away, Claire's voice said over the line. When I stepped inside her office, she was standing beside the large window. You put out that public company announcement? Yes, I did. You really did not need to go that far for me. Yes, I most certainly did. What was your reasoning? She turned her whole body around to face me. They targeted you specifically because of your connection to me? I shook my head back and forth. No. They attacked me because they wanted to inflict harm upon you. And that is precisely why I had to offer you my protection. I struggled to find suitable words to respond to her. Claire Bennett was not speaking in the tone of a corporate CEO. She spoke as a person who truly cared, perhaps caring far too much. I lowered myself down into a nearby chair. Claire, there is an important subject we really need to talk through. I already know what you want to discuss. I do not want you making key decisions simply out of a sense of responsibility toward me. She appeared confused by my statement. Is that genuinely what you believe is happening? I think you are accustomed to carrying every burden all by your lonesome. Now you finally found someone willing to help carry that load, and you are clinging tightly to that support. She stayed silent for a short stretch of time. Then she walked forward, closing the distance between us. Do you honestly think that is the sole reason for all of this? I cannot say for certain. Then allow me to lay it out plainly for you. Her tone remained calm and steady. The umbrella was never the reason I chose to place my faith in you. I looked toward her in genuine surprise. It was not? No, it was not. She sat down in the chair positioned across from my own. That umbrella was merely the very first moment I truly took notice of you. Then what was the real deciding factor? It was you, plain and simple. That reply caught me completely off guard. Claire kept on explaining her reasoning. I closely observed how you treated other co-workers after you joined my project team. I was only performing the duties assigned to my job. No. She shook her head gently. You lent assistance to employees who could offer you nothing in return. You stayed behind to work late hours when nobody was there to acknowledge your efforts. You stood up for people who lacked enough power to defend their own interests. A faint smile appeared on her face. You were the exact same man inside this office as you were out there in the pouring rain. I remained without speaking a word. I had no idea how to process being seen so completely and clearly by another person. Just then Claire's phone began to ring. She picked up the call. Her facial expression underwent a shift. What has taken place? She listened intently to the caller, then instantly rose up onto her feet. Where is this happening? I watched the change sweep across her features. Something terrible had just come up. Once she finished the phone call, I asked her what news she had received. They have located the final piece of evidence needed to take down Richard. That sounds like fantastic progress. No. She looked me straight in the eyes. They only found it because somebody wanted us to find it? I furrowed my brows in confusion. What exactly are you trying to tell me? They deliberately left it sitting in a spot that is blatantly obvious to discover. So what does that mean for us? It means they want Richard's misdeeds to get exposed to everyone. Understanding dawned within my mind. There is yet another hidden player pulling strings from behind the scenes. Claire gave a confirming nod of her head. Someone has been manipulating both opposing sides of this whole conflict. Richard is not the only individual mixed up in all of these schemes. The deeper we dug into this mess, the larger and more complicated this problem grew. Later that same afternoon, we uncovered the full truth. The mastermind orchestrating every single event was Marcus Vale, Richard's former business partner. Many years ago, Marcus had helped Richard destroy Claire's very first startup company. But after Richard achieved great success, he abandoned Marcus without a second thought. Now Marcus was consumed by a burning desire for revenge. He had no real interest in seizing control of Claire's company for himself. His goal was to obliterate every single person who had ever betrayed him, Richard included. A police investigation was immediately launched into the whole affair. Yet Marcus still possessed one final destructive move ready to unleash. He leaked private photographs of Claire dating back several years into the past. There was nothing illegal contained within those pictures. They only captured her going through the most agonizing phase of her life. The online world erupted in vicious attacks without delay. Internet users labeled her as weak and fragile. They claimed she failed to live up to everyone's expectation of a cold-hearted, perfect CEO. I watched as she read through all those cruel online comments. For the very first time, I witnessed something I had never seen before. It was not anger but raw, genuine pain. Claire. She shut her laptop computer closed. I am fine. I cracked a small smile. You really ought to come up with a new go-to response. She looked over toward me. What are you referring to? Every single time you are hurting inside you insist you are fine. A tiny smile tugged at the corner of her lips. You still remember that little detail about me? Unfortunately for you, yes. She let out a quiet little laugh. Then her mood shifted back into serious territory. Austin. Yeah. If conditions keep growing worse from here. I already knew exactly what she was about to say. No. She paused mid-sentence. You do not even know what I was planning to say. You were going to tell me I ought to walk away from all of this. She directed her gaze off to one side. I was going to say that. But I am not going anywhere. Austin. No. I stood up to my full height. You gave me a valuable opportunity back when nobody even knew who I was. I did not offer you my support because you were Claire Bennett, the CEO. I know that truth. I stood by you because you were simply a human being going through hardship. She lifted her eyes to meet mine. And now I choose to stay right here for that exact same reason, because you are a person. For a short moment, she did not utter a single syllable. After that she smiled. This was not her polished CEO smile, nor was it a public-facing performance smile. It was her genuine, unguarded smile. Before either of us could carry on our conversation, my mobile phone began ringing. It was Jake on the other end of the line. I answered. Austin. You need to get back over to the office building immediately. What sort of emergency is going on? His voice carried a heavy sense of gravity. The board of directors has just called for an emergency vote to be held. What kind of vote are they conducting? There came a brief pause over the phone connection. They are voting on whether Claire keeps her position as chief executive officer. I turned my head to look straight at Claire. Her facial expression changed completely. Everything we had fought so hard for was unraveling all over again. Only this time, the fight was no longer purely about proving her decisions were correct. This battle existed to prove that placing trust in another person was not her greatest weakness. It was her single greatest strength. Claire grabbed hold of her jacket from the nearby surface. Let us go. I followed closely behind her. I did not walk behind her, I walked right beside her. Because for the first time, neither of us was running away, and neither of us was forced to fight all alone. This emergency board meeting was unlike any other gathering I had ever witnessed. Typical business meetings centered around numbers, corporate strategies, and official decisions. This one was deeply personal in every possible way. Every individual seated within that room had already picked a side to support. Some people were convinced Claire Bennett was far too emotional for the CEO role. Others argued she lacked sufficient experience for the position. Several board members simply coveted her powerful title for themselves. And by standing right next to her, I had also become a major target. Even so, this time I was not entertaining thoughts of walking away. I was not preoccupied with protecting my own personal reputation. My mind was focused entirely on this woman who gave me a chance when everyone else only saw trouble. Claire stepped into the conference room ahead of me and I followed in her footsteps. Richard Lawson was already present, alongside every remaining board member. The instant we entered, the chairman opened up the discussion. Claire, this meeting exists to determine whether you remain fit to lead Bennett Technologies. Claire calmly lowered herself into her seat. I understand the purpose. Richard looked over toward her. That is good to hear. His overbearing confidence irritated me, as he still believed he maintained full control. He remained unaware of everything we had managed to uncover. The truth was finally about to see the light of day. The chairman placed multiple documents down upon the tabletop. Before we proceed to casting votes, we must go over recent events. Claire nodded her head. Please go ahead. Richard pushed himself up onto his feet. Over the last few days, this company has endured one crisis after another. He swept his gaze across every person sitting around the table. We lost a major client, we suffered serious security breaches, internal confusion runs rampant. After that his eyes shifted and locked onto me. And there are highly questionable decisions stemming from personal relationships. I expected Claire to react with some form of pushback. She did not do that at all. Instead, she gave a faint little smile. Are you finished with your speech? Richard's eyebrows drew together into a frown. For the time being, yes. Perfect. Claire opened up the folder resting before her. Because I also have critical information I wish to present to this group. Every person in the room directed their full focus toward her. Claire laid several sheets of paperwork out onto the table surface. These are financial records originating from my very first company. Richard's facial features shifted. It was only a very small change, yet it was more than enough to notice. The chairman picked up those documents to examine them. What material is this supposed to be? Hard concrete proof. Richard immediately spoke up in protest. Those documents hold no relevance for our current discussion. No. Claire's gaze zeroed in on him. They are the exact reason why we find ourselves gathered in this room today. She kept right on speaking. 3 years in the past, my original company collapsed after confidential data got leaked straight to competing businesses. Every single person's eyes turned toward Richard. He maintained an outward appearance of calm composure. I have already told all of you that accusation was never proven. You are completely correct about that fact, Claire agreed. That is because Marcus Vale was the individual assisting you in concealing all the evidence. A shockwave rippled through the whole room. That name carried significant weight for everyone present. The chairman looked genuinely stunned. Marcus Vale? Claire nodded her head firmly. He kept detailed written records of everything. She turned to address all the board members collectively. And those records prove Richard Lawson manipulated investors, leaked private information. He destroyed my startup company in order to seize power for himself. Richard shot up out of his chair. This is absolute nonsense. No. Claire's voice grew louder and more powerful. This is the truth you have spent many long years trying to erase from existence. Richard glanced all around the room, searching for someone who would back his claims. Not a single person offered him any support. For the very first time he appeared uncertain and shaken. But then a smirk returned to his face. Do you imagine this changes absolutely anything? Claire looked directly back at him. Yes, it does. And why exactly is that? Because this time around I am not facing all of this completely alone. Richard's eyes darted over toward me, and I understood his expectation. He was waiting for me to show signs of fear. Yet fear was the furthest thing from what I felt. The official investigation dragged on for multiple weeks. Richard got removed from his seat on the board of directors. Marcus was taken into police custody after he attempted to flee the area. All of the malicious rumors slowly faded away into nothing. The company gradually recovered from all the damage it had sustained. Nevertheless, the most meaningful transformation did not take place within Bennett Technologies. That change happened inside of Claire herself. In times past, she built tall defensive walls to keep other people at a distance. Now she began allowing select individuals to draw close to her inner world. 1 month later, life finally settled back into something resembling normalcy. Well, almost normal. I still held down my job working at Bennett Technologies. Claire remained in her role as my chief executive officer. And yes, people still talked and whispered about the two of us. But now the gossip was no longer claiming I got my position through favoritism. Staff members said I earned my place fair and square through my own hard work. One evening, I found Claire standing outside of the company's main building. It was that exact same spot where I first laid eyes on her. She was holding on to something in her grasp, my old umbrella. I smiled at the sight. You still have that thing in your possession? She glanced down to look at it. Yes, I do. That umbrella is pretty beat up and ancient. I know it is. You could easily purchase 1,000 brand new replacements. I know I could. Then why hold on to this worn-out old one? She lifted her gaze to meet mine. Because this was the very first object anybody ever gave me without expecting something in return. I looked away for a brief moment because I fully grasped the deeper meaning. That umbrella was not valuable because of the physical object itself. Its value lay in what it symbolized between us. You know, I began to speak. When I handed this to you, I thought I was just helping out a total stranger. Claire smiled softly. And back then I believed I had lost absolutely everything. But you had not lost everything. No. She directed her eyes toward me. Instead, I found something precious. I raised one of my eyebrows in curiosity. What did you find? I found you. I let out a small laugh. That is a touch overly dramatic. Maybe it is. She stepped a little bit closer toward my position. Yet it is still the honest truth. For the first time ever while knowing Claire, I no longer felt like I stood beside someone untouchable. She was not the intimidating CEO everyone feared. She was simply Claire. The woman who cried out in the pouring rain. The woman who trusted me before she even knew my full name. The woman who taught me that sometimes the smallest moments can alter your entire life path. Several weeks following those events, Claire invited me out for dinner. This was not an invitation from my CEO or my boss. It was just Claire asking me as herself. We sat inside that same cafe where we first talked after that rainy night. She looked different not because her appearance changed, but because she finally stopped putting on a false front for other people. You know what strikes me as funny? She commented. What is it? If I had not lost my umbrella on that fateful night, the two of us likely would have never met. I gave a light smile. Technically speaking, you never actually lost it. No, I did not lose it. I pointed a finger toward my own chest. I am the one who found you. A laugh escaped from her lips. Afterward, her expression turned earnest and sincere. Austin. Yeah. Thank you. Are you thanking me for giving you that umbrella? She shook her head from side to side. I am thanking you for truly seeing me for who I am. I had no perfectly polished reply ready for that heartfelt statement. So I spoke the only words that felt genuine and right. You were never invisible to me, Claire. She smiled gently. Perhaps I am not invisible any longer. Years down the road, people would talk about the great successes achieved by Claire Bennett. They would discuss how she rebuilt her company from ruin. How she defeated all the people who plotted to destroy her life. How she grew to become one of the most highly respected leaders across the whole industry. But I would always remember a completely different set of memories. I would remember that rainy night long ago. A stranger who insisted she did not require any outside assistance. That simple, ordinary umbrella. And the moment I came to understand that sometimes you do not hunt for the person who rewrites your whole existence. Sometimes they are the ones who find you first.